So it seems that we're having a little bit of an issue with Facebook right now. So let me just start because I hate to leave people waiting. My name's Sue Chandler. I'm chair of the South Lake Tahoe Democratic Club. I've been a part-time resident of South Lake Tahoe since 1988 and full-time for the last 4 years. I do come from New York roots, went to the University of Maine, Orono, where I was a geology major, graduating with a teaching credential. I've had a lifelong interest in politics. My first political memory was watching the election between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon, going back to 1960. I became politically involved in college. I attended the 1969 anti-war protest in DC. And as a result of that, I realized how important environmental issues were to our general cause. The first Earth Day was 50 years ago, April 22nd, 1970. Over 1 billion people participated worldwide in 190 countries. The first Earth Day was really a result of leaded gas, inefficient automobiles, industrial plants, starting to overuse one-time plastic products, landfills overflowing, and also the popularity of a book called Silent Spring that was written by Rachel Carson. And that led people to take action to organize the first Earth Day. I organized the first Earth Day at the University of Maine in Orono. We had maybe about 500 students out on the quad, and our concerns were very local. We were concerned about recycling on the university campus, and we were concerned about the air and the water pollution in our area that was resulting from the paper mills that were nearby. For my generation, Vietnam and the Earth concerns were a catalyst for political activity and change being made from the bottom up, because we did realize that our efforts against the Vietnam War were helping to make a change in American policy in that war. So jumping ahead, let's go to 2000. This was the first activity that really made me realize how important politics were. This was the election between Gore and Bush. Yes, Bush won Florida by 537 votes. The Supreme Court awarded the electoral votes to Bush, and as a result, the election went to Bush. I very frequently think how this world would be different if Gore had become the president, how our country would have reacted differently to the 9/11 attacks, and how our climate policies would have changed 20 years ago. A more recent example of why voting matters deals with a statewide election in Virginia. There was one delegation seat where it was an absolute tie, 10,608 votes to 10,608 votes. They decided the winner by picking a name out of a hat. The Republican won, and as a result, the Republicans took control of the Virginia delegation. So yes, the bottom line is that voting really does matter. Excuse me for a minute. Okay, our current choices have never been clearer. Since Trump has been in office, he's reversed 100 environmental rules. In the chat, there's a reference to a New York Times article that specifies the specific laws, but in a nutshell, Trump has reversed 19 air pollution and emission laws, 11 drilling and extraction laws, 12 infrastructure and planning laws, 11 animal welfare laws, 4 water pollution laws, 6 toxic substance laws, and 30 other laws are in progress of being reversed. Our congressperson, Tom McClintock, according to the League of Conservation Voters, he votes against the environment 97% of the time. This documentation is also in the chat. This is incredibly appalling since he represents one of the most beautiful districts in the country that include Tahoe, Yosemite, Grand Sequoia, and parts of the Central Valley. Our state senator, Brian Dahl, a Republican, also has poor ratings on environmental issues. According to Vote Smart, the League of California Conservation Voters ranks him at 11% on environmental laws. The Clean Water Act of California has rated him as 14%, and the Sierra Club has rated him at 11%. Today, we will hear from Vern Keenan, who's running against McClintock, and Pamela Swartz, who's running against Brian Dahl. Unfortunately, Joe Biden isn't able to participate in this webinar, and I didn't invite him either. But anyway, Pamela and Brynne have been asked to describe their climate policies to you. Also asked to join this webinar are some local candidates. We have Dave Peterson, who's running for for the Public Utility Board in South Lake Tahoe. And as of right now, I see John Friedrich, who's running for City Council. We do hope that you'll understand our need to be flexible with time. I did let Brynne know that she'd be able to bounce in and out, Pamela as well, and the local candidates will kind of fill in between. If you do have any questions, please type them in the chat and we'll try to get to them during the webinar. And if we don't get to them during the webinar, then we'll try to answer them directly to you. So, Sarah, how would you like to proceed?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. I was doing my thing to try to get us to stream live on Facebook, and I'll be working on that in the background. Sue, do you think we have a sec so I can introduce this webinar in the context of what's going on this week?
Sure.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for teaming up with the Tahoe Climate Change Action Network to put on this particular webinar. This is one of 7 that's happening this week as part of Tahoe Climate Week. This is the 5th so far this week in the series, and just to kind of give you a glimpse of what we've done this week and what we've got left, we hosted a webinar on Monday where we had a slate of the hosts for the week, and showed our attendees that climate activism is the key to inspiring collective action toward this tipping point of climate change that we need to achieve. Tuesday, we hosted 2 sessions targeting high school and community college students, letting the youth know that we as adults are making progress, and we hoped to instill a sense of hope and agency in them toward joining this movement. Wednesday, we heard about green jobs and training initiatives in this area and the vision of Tahoe being a model of sustainability that can be replicated. Tomorrow, I'm going to be hosting a number of local organizations who are presenting volunteer opportunities in climate change action to anyone who's interested. And on Saturday, we're going to be bringing it all together by being part of a global climate change action event in partnership with the TEDx organization. It's going to be really cool. I'm going to stream some of their content and host a local discussion here about how that applies at our local level. So a lot of cool things happening this week. I'm going to put a link in the chat where people can find out more about those upcoming webinars and can see the recordings from the ones earlier this week. So with that, thanks so much. I look forward to the discussion. And I will be hosting the chat room and the Q&A. So to our attendees, please ask panelist questions in the Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on the chat for you too. Thanks, Sue.
So Pamela, are you okay waiting until after Brynne? Yeah, okay. So how about let's starting with you, Dave. Dave's running for the utility board, and he's the other person that the Democratic Club has endorsed is Jenny Peterson. Unfortunately, she's tied up in court today. She's a lawyer and is not able to take part in this webinar. But Dave, how about your vision for Lake Tahoe Valley as far as the environmental concerns?
Certainly, a brief introduction first. My name is Dave Peterson. Thank you for inviting me to this today. I grew up in South Lake Tahoe in the 1960s and 70s. My father started up Alpine Animal Hospital on Highway 89 back in 1965, and we lived in Tahoe Keys, and I raced for Heavenly Valley back in those days. Had to leave Tahoe to become a civil engineer, and I've been practicing for the last almost 40 years as a civil engineer in water resources. And it's really that expertise that I bring to South Tahoe PUD. There were formerly 2 engineers on the board. Jim Jones passed away, and Randy Vogelsang did not run this time. So they do not have an engineer on the board, and I think that's a gap that I hope to fill. As far as climate change goes, as a water resources engineer, my focus has been to work to modify infrastructure and land use plans to handle the oncoming changes to our physical world resulting from climate change. These accommodations will take substantial planning, financial resources, determination, and time to implement. And I believe STPUD's focus needs to be on long-range planning and implementation so that we can be counted on to always keep the water on. And it's really that is my vision for South Tahoe PUD. I believe that's our charge. I will say that South Tahoe PUD does have some real opportunities for green power production, but it's not maybe what you think is their biggest opportunity is actually in hydropower, which the utility exports all of its treated wastewater over into the Carson Valley, and it goes up and over Luther Pass. Well, that water, once it gets to Luther Pass, travels down, along Highway 88 and 89, and the energy is lost. It's not recovered. And I think there's a huge potential to recover that energy fully. And one of the issues with solar power is that as soon as the sun goes down, it goes to zero. And you have to have a full backup power. And hydropower has a unique capability of filling in those shoulder production load in a carbon-free way. And I really think that's the big opportunity for South Tahoe PUD. So with that, I guess I'll turn it back to you, Sue.
Thank you very much, Dave. We really appreciate you joining us. And if you feel like you need to go away for other things, feel free, but you're of course more than welcome to join us. Okay, and what perfect timing, because I see that Brynne is now online. And basically, Brynne, it's your show. Just to let you know, I've introduced you already. I've also given some information about Tom McClintock's record on the environment, and that he's rated 97% voting against environmental concerns in our issue. And with that, I'll let you go. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for having me today. Sue, thank you for all of your leadership in the Tahoe Basin and everything that you are doing to preserve and protect our future with respect to our land and our climate. I am Brynne Kennedy, and I very much hope to have the honor of representing all of you in Congress next year. I am running against Tom McClintock, who, as Sue mentioned, is a virulently anti-climate representative, one of the largest climate deniers in our entire Congress. It is rather ironic and rather sad that we have a representative for our district, which includes the Tahoe Basin and also Yosemite National Park and a great deal of the Sierra, to have a representative who denies the existence of climate change is something very, very sad for all of us. The first thing that we need to do to put us on a course for a great future in our area is we need to defeat him in November. He's literally out of step with the consensus view of our government, our business leaders, our national security community, our science community, and the people of our community. We have a $1 billion outdoor industry in our district. We have a very large ski industry. We have many tour guide companies in both Yosemite and Tahoe. And we have countless people like myself who enjoy recreation time outdoors. And we have to protect this. We have to stand up for our community and protect this. It is important to note that Tom McClintock has never chosen to live in our community. So it is perhaps understandable that he doesn't appreciate it like I do and you do on this phone call. I can't fathom why you would not choose to live in a community like ours with some of the greatest national treasures in our state and in our nation, but he has not. So let's talk a little bit about my plan once we do defeat him. So my plan is predicated on two pillars to take on climate change. One is infrastructure investment, and the second is unleashing the power of American ingenuity to solve big problems with both the public sector and the private sector working together. So infrastructure investment is an area that I very much would like to lead on and feel very passionate about. Something I've heard from so many of you as I used to drive and now Zoom up and down the campaign trail. I support a comprehensive infrastructure investment package where we put upgrading our nation's infrastructure and doing it with the next generation with climate change in mind as a core part of the package. If we have better roads, we have less driving. If we have better public transportation, we have less emissions. If we have better broadband, we have less commuting. We also have the foundation for an economy that can be strong, where we can attract jobs, support our small businesses, and make everyone's life a little bit better with better infrastructure. The second pillar of my plan is to, as I said, unleash American ingenuity. So I spent most of my life working in the private sector, pretty far from politics. I built a business that I started at my kitchen table and grew to operate all over the world. And I had the privilege of meeting people solving really big problems, really great entrepreneurs, really great investors bringing their private capital to support entrepreneurs solving big problems. And I believe that we as a nation can solve climate change. We can solve it when the government creates the framework for the private sector to solve it with tax incentives and tax breaks for solutions like carbon capture and upgrading our energy grid and solving other aspects of climate change. In all of our nation's history, we have solved big problems by a combination of public involvement, creating the conditions, being a seed investor, and the brilliance of the private sector. We saw this in the space program. We saw this in the creation of the internet, which allows us to be talking right now. And I believe that if we do this, we will together solve climate change for all of our future. The other point I wanted to make is about the importance of protecting our public lands. We recently had a bill in Congress called the Great American Outdoors Act. It was the largest conservation bill since Teddy Roosevelt. It was also one of the rare bipartisan pieces of legislation that we see in this era. Bernie Sanders and Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi all came together to progress this legislation. In fact, Vice President Pence mentioned it last night in the debate. 83 senators voted for it, and much of the House of Representatives. And the point of the bill was to bring funding to our public lands, to our national parks, to support their maintenance, to preserve them for generations to come. And much of those dollars would come back to our district to preserve our public lands and our national parks. All of our counties, all 10 of them, and our city council officials lobbied our congressmen to support this bill, vote for it, and then help to bring those funds back to our public lands, to our environment. Our congressman, however, voted against it because that's how out of touch he is with our community. We need change. We need someone who makes decisions based on science. We need someone with the energy and the ideas to solve a problem of the magnitude of climate change. And we need someone who lives here and who listens and who cares about our community to vote for things like the Great American Outdoors Act. I hope to have the honor of representing all of you next year in Congress. I would like your vote in November, and I would love for you to go to brynneforcongress.com and sign up to volunteer with us or make a donation to help us win in November. This is a historic opportunity to do that. And together we can bring change to our district. We can turn a page to a new era where we say, let's put partisan politics and all those performances we see on Twitter and TV aside. And let's put real people and real progress for our community first. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me. And I very much hope to represent you all next year in Congress.
Thank you so much, Brynne. Very passionate and very good advice as to what we can be doing in our community to further our environmental needs. And I understand that you are a very busy woman right now, and we all wish you the best. We'll all vote for you. And I know that you have other things to be doing. So I really appreciate your time and being able to share that with us.
Good to see you, Brynne.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah,
I'll
bye-bye.
stay for a little bit and put a link in the chat.
I think we've already gotten the brynneforcongress.com in the chat.
Great.
And we've gotten the information in the chat about Tom's scorecard. So people can look at that later.
Or you can just look at goose eggs. Yeah.
Considering make
Yeah,
sure you get a
thank
glass
you.
of wine for it.
Good, good.
To like calm the sting a little bit.
Yes, yes.
All right, take care, y'all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, I'd like to now introduce Pamela Swartz. Pamela is running to be our state senator. And I'm just gonna let her take it because I think she has quite an interesting presentation ready for us.
Hi, everybody. It's super cool to be here. Thank you so much. And actually, it is a cool day. Our first, I think, in like how many months? So I'm really enjoying actually wearing the jacket. It feels nice. Sadly, though, because of climate change, we will not get any rain. I read today that we typically will get our rain, our first, Brynne, I hope you're okay. Sadly, I know we're not going to get our first rain. We usually get it by mid-September, and unfortunately, it's not coming. So climate change is very near and dear to all of us living here in the North State. And in fact, our district is the California watershed. So without our California watershed being healthy, unfortunately, we're not going to really have much of a future for California environmentally and economically. So going after climate change is very important. Real fast, I just wanted to say that I am Pamela Swartz. I'm running for state senate. I live in Nevada City. I grew up in this district primarily. I grew up in writing. I went away to college in the Bay Area, started a business. It's a skincare company over 31 years ago. I had many employees over those years. And then 10 years ago, I moved up here back up to more rural district, Nevada County. And I have an online company doing the skincare company. And then also, I love horses, as you can tell by my nifty logo behind me. And I trim horses. I'm a barefoot farrier, a trimmer. So I have 2 jobs actually. And then running for this, it's been quite amazing, I have to say. It's been a lot of push, a lot of go. So anyhow, I just wanted to go over a presentation that I put together actually for the Sunrise Movement, and sort of go over our plan and what I would like to do. And of course, during that presentation, it comes up pretty obviously where our opponent sits. Who doesn't, I don't know if he believes in climate change. His policies, his votes don't necessarily reflect that. So I think I'm gonna be able, hopefully, to share my screen. And I'll speak quickly so that hopefully it's going to load here. Please load. There we go. All righty. So let me just do a couple of things here. All right. So as we all know, and this is again, it was geared towards the Sunrise Movement, which is a Green New Deal put together by young people for a Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal isn't some sort of legislation that's already been written. It's just a framework that we want to talk about that really, we can read it. A 10-year plan to mobilize every aspect of American society to 100% clean and renewable energy by 2030. That's 10 years from now. That's not very long. We've got to get ourselves going fast. We should have been doing this 20 years ago. But part of the Green New Deal is also socioeconomic and racial justice platform, which I think is extremely important to bring into our into our state. So guaranteed living wage job for anyone who needs one, and a fair transition for both workers and frontline communities. We do have a lot of folks that that are working in the oil industry and the fossil fuel industry. It's unfair of us to change our energy infrastructure and not bring them along and have job training programs. Some of the things I'd like to do as your state senator, increase the cap and trade programs. We need to continue to incentivize moving towards green energy production to reach our 2030 goal here in California, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, and our 2050 goal to reduce it by 80%. And that is reduced by the 1990 levels. I would like to get a little more aggressive on that, but I think that we need to continue that and keep on going more aggressively. Kind of a cool thing here, in February of 2020, through the carbon allowance auction, we added $600 million to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which we can use for programs to further reduce climate and local air pollution and advance environmental equity. I think that we need to keep doing that and, of course, have less carbon to sell. Something else I'd like to do is to promote and expand green and sustainable energy generation. Right here in our district, we have amazing biomass, and it's just sitting there, and often it's burning and it's not helping us out. So wind, solar, geothermal, biomass cogen plants, I think it's literally right here on our ground that we can use to make energy. Biomass plants satisfy many needs in our district. There's a nifty technique, the gasification technique. It produces hydrogen fuel, which of course we know is clean burning. It produces water. It also, to do all this, we're going to talk about infrastructure. We can create new well-paying jobs and obviously support existing ones. It reduces our overall fire hazard, increases the health and diversity of forests and watersheds. And as a forestry major in college, one of the things we need to do is we need to continue our species diversity in our forests, which reduces the chances that we're going to have massive beetle infestation and just kills off hillsides and forests. So we need to continue with our diversification. Obviously, biomass facilities also reduces greenhouse gas emissions versus letting the biomass just decompose naturally. We can put that to use. And then, of course, one of my favorite things, of course, is bringing all of this energy generation to the local level, so that these companies, small biomass facilities, are beholden to their locale versus to some large entity like some like for example a large national or international fossil fuels company like Chevron or Mobil or something. Something else I want to do is transition to electric and hydrogen vehicles. This is very doable. The gasification technique, as I mentioned, also produces hydrogen fuel. And there are companies out there that are working now on getting semi-trucks and buses to be using hydrogen fuel. So that reduces, of course, pollution as well. So anyways, but things like supporting Assembly Bill 326 in the state to allow electric vehicle manufacturers to lease month to month directly to consumers. Once a person gets into an electric vehicle and realizes like, wow, this is really kind of cool. It's very clean running. It's very quiet. They plug it in. That's one of the biggest hurdles, is to get a person into an electric vehicle. We need to also make sure that we can maybe supplement some of that initial purchase cost as well, but for the state of California to step in and do that. And I believe the federal government needs to do a lot of this as well. So this bill, Assembly Bill 326, unfortunately didn't make it all the way through, but I would like to pick that back up again and push it forward, maybe with some other changes like I mentioned. Support biomass gasification plants. I already talked about that a little bit in order to transition over to electric and hydrogen fuels. And then this is the build out of the fueling stations and other infrastructure. There's a company called Yosemite Clean, actually, that is in California that's putting in a few biomass facilities that are going to be producing hydrogen fuels. And they're also partnering with Nikola and I think another big truck company to actually make large semi trucks for hauling up and down our state corridor that run on hydrogen. So another thing we need to do is we need to expedite the regulatory hurdles to streamline the transition process. Sometimes this stuff gets all hung up in all these little nitty gritty little things. We need to just get it going, get it going, get it going. Let's just get it, let's do it. Let's stop trying to make everything so difficult and complicated. I like that idea as a small business owner myself. If I want to get something done, make a plan, let's do it. So incentivize and reward land use practices that sequester carbon in the soil. This is something that we can do, actually, a lot of people can do right here, right now in our more rural district. The livestock, use livestock to actually till. They use the little hooves and they till the soil by squishing dead plants down into the soils, and that sequesters carbon. It also regenerates the soils so that we can produce more plants that hold more carbon. So promote restorative farming practices such as low or no tilling to keep the carbon in the soil, use of organic fertilizers to improve soil health. Taking us off of the fossil fuel fertilizers. And then employing forestry practices that restore forest health, increase soil water retention, and lower greenhouse gas emissions by burying dead biomass on a large scale. That will also then put those nutrients back into the soil. So it's a combination of removing that biomass to fuel your biomass facility, but also leaving behind some to continue that soil regeneration. And this has all been, by many scientists looked at, examined, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we have a lot of this already ready to go. Another thing is that I would like to really push for oil production limits, stop fossil fuel development, and then eventually just evict the fossil fuel industry from California. It's really time. They've done their fair share. We need to get them out of here. Support legislation like AB 345 that requires minimum setback distances between oil wells and residential areas and other public places. This bill failed, and I believe that Brian Daly voted against it. It just shows that continued strength and that infiltration of the oil industry in California. And then we also need to garner support of fossil fuel industry building trades and unions by promoting job retraining programs in the green energy sector. And that was something I had mentioned earlier about that, that we need to be able to have a training program right here in our district to teach folks how to transition from oil jobs into green energy sector jobs. And I believe the unions would definitely be on part for that. This is just pushing for additional measures to secure a green economy. So again, part of that whole green economy is education and job training programs. Don't leave people behind. We need people to be on board with what we want to do, because this is going to impact all of our lives. So invest in all forms of education and job training programs for local people in our district to become the steady workforce we need to support a green economy. That's key. We need a steady, sustainable workforce. We need to continue to clean up toxic water and air and land sites, because we know that these areas adversely impact disproportionately Black and Latino communities, the more marginalized communities. We need to fight for living wage with benefits for all new and existing jobs associated with the Green New Deal, the green economy, as an incentive for workers to transition into this new industry, especially for people of color, Black, Indigenous folks, who have been oftentimes pushed to the side. We need to continue pushing legislation for battling climate change and and accelerating the thinning of forests and heavily vegetated areas to reduce carbon emitting wildfires. AB 1659 was just that kind of a bill. My opponent decided just not to vote on it. It was for wildfire, reduction of wildfire and cleaning up of water sites. He just decided not to vote on it. Something crucial right here in the district. And then absolutely push for a shorter time frame, like I mentioned. 2050 is sort of far out there. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it until 2050. So I really do think that we need to push to have it happen much faster. So anyhow, I just want to say thanks, and I will stop sharing my screen. And just tell you that I'm super proud to say that we did get the endorsement of the Sunrise Movement in Chico, which is what that presentation was for, and the local Sierra Club as well. So I think it's really important to look at the true gold mine that our district has, which is truly the biomass in our district. And I don't need to keep on hashing it and saying it every time, but I really believe that one biomass facility every 100 miles, or as far as the next one has to be, would obviously bring good jobs, reduce our fire risk, reduce all of our fire insurance cancellations. Yes, we did get one. And really bring a sustainable economy to our North State. And like I said in the beginning, our district is the California watershed, truly the watershed of California. And if our watershed is not healthy and thriving, not just surviving, but truly thriving, the rest of our California economy that relies upon us for drinking water, agricultural water, industrial water, is also going to be faltering. So it behooves every Californian to pay attention to this district because we are truly the drinking water. And so running against Brian Daly has been a little frustrating because I haven't actually been able to say these things out in a public forum. He refuses to have a public forum. We've had, since the beginning of this campaign in December, we've had a combination of 8 opportunities to have public forums, and all of them he's decided not to show up. And further, not to even RSVP to many of them. So I just want people to know that I am going to fight for our climate sustainability and the health of our sustainability and the people in our district. Because if we don't have a healthy environment, we can talk all day long about how much we want to do our healthcare changes and education. But if we don't have the ability to actually live in this district safely, then all that goes out the window. So I just want to say thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions. And I appreciate all that you guys are doing. And it's so nice to talk to people who believe in science and climate change. So thank you.
Wonderful passion, Pamela, and we're rooting for you. Does anybody have a question? Or maybe just put them in the chat and I can then get them to Pamela and we can answer them later.
Sure, that sounds great. That sounds
well,
fantastic.
Anyway, we do have one more speaker. John is here. John's running for City Council, and Pamela, I think you'll enjoy listening to his presentation because he's the climate guy of South Lake Tahoe. John, do you want to start?
Thanks, Sue, and thanks, Pamela. That was very educational and inspiring, and I would say that yes to all that, and we're trying to do a lot of those approaches on the ground here in Tahoe with a 100% renewable committee and lifting up some of those elements in my campaign. So thank you for all that. Again, we have to do all these things at every level, right? Including globally, and I think part of what we do locally can help, is informed by what happens globally and can inspire what happens globally. South Lake Tahoe is the 24th city in the country, and there's now 160 to commit to 100% renewables. We were the first in the Sierra. So the little engine that could, I think sometimes you can be, smaller and nimble, and in so doing, with your boldness and ambition, have a bigger impact. So, and David, I really liked your, the hydro. I would just say that hydro to me is a smart choice for stupid. So yes, John Friedrich, I've been involved in climate and clean energy issues for quite a while. It's really my inspiration for, I guess, running and the work that I do in the bigger picture as a dad. I used to work at a group called Climate Parents, which I started a little bit after my now 14-year-old daughter Rosie was born. The idea of if you care about your kids and their future, you have to care about climate action. You know, we save for their college and we do all these things to protect them. Dads like to think of themselves as protecting their kids, but if you really want to protect your kids, you can't do it on a climate that's, planet that's ravaged by climate change. So we all have to do as much as we can at the utility district, in the state legislature, in Congress. We have to get a new president, clearly. We have to rejoin the world in the Paris Climate Agreement. And so then, again, at the local level, we're not going to solve climate change at any of our jurisdictions. However, we can model the solution. So, and then again, in turn, inspire with Tahoe, we have millions of visitors. So my vision is that we become a model sustainable community that exemplifies the best climate resilient practices, adaptation practices, that when you come here, you see a community that's powered by 100% renewable, and not just out in the desert, but on top of all of our roofs. Distributed generation means distributed jobs. The more you do locally, the more local electricians and installers you can hire to do that. It means visiting the basin, ideally outside of your private automobile, but have people show up in an electric bus, stay somewhere where they can get picked up in an electric micro shuttle and taken around the lake in an electric ferry, and hop on, hop off buses around the lake, just for examples, where to stay in walkable, bikeable communities, to come here and leave your car parked and bike and walk everywhere, or get on a shuttle instead. So you have a better experience as a visitor, and you're seeing how Tahoe is again, responding to climate change by being as bold as possible in all the solutions. And then I think a key aspect of that is helping with education, to say, every visitor that comes here should say, hey, I want to have the lowest possible carbon footprint, because I know the biggest threat to Lake Tahoe is climate change. That is, our scientists are very clear: warming waters, algae, invasive weeds threaten the lake's famed clarity. We have more rain than snow in the winter, which washes more sediment into the lake. So no matter what we do locally, and that's been our historic focus of controlling development and whatnot, also important. But if we're not, part of a global tapestry to take on climate change, where it's an uphill battle. So I think our biggest export really can be inspiration and education to visitors. But in so doing, so this is, then kind of bringing it back to the ground. As I talk to people in the community, let's quite honestly, it's like climate change is not the first thing that they talk about in their top issues, but there's an intersection to climate change in every issue. So for example, biggest issue now, affordable housing. And people are getting squeezed out. They're not making enough money to be able to afford to live here. Got a lot of money coming in from the outside that is buying up houses, and renters have nowhere to go. And then, of course, people got laid off during COVID. So it's a housing crisis that needs to be addressed right away. Another issue, that we had local protesting tourists this year because people felt like it was just not sustainable. And so that's another issue. So for example, on those issues, on the latter one, with tourism, if we're helping the people here to not be in their car, managing them, making it hard to park all along Emerald Bay, and making it easy to travel by microtransit, et cetera, we're modeling our climate response with electric transportation while addressing the issue locals care about, which is the impact of mega tourism and not being managed well. On housing, Pamela, you mentioned a workforce housing and a steady workforce. I mentioned this yesterday on the Green Jobs Coalition call, but I have a Tahoe Green Jobs Initiative, and one element there that connects to something you might be interested in with forests is working with groups, that are working, like my wife Kim does a workforce training at the community college for forest health, and a job placement program, getting people trained to do fuels reduction and careers in that field. So there's jobs there, right, and thinning the forest. Then we're working to get workforce training dollars to have people mill. So biomass is one option. Another option is wood milling. So taking that wood and making it into wood products, including, say, siding for affordable housing. So we do thinning, people get jobs there, get job milling the wood, and then get jobs in making of new green affordable housing using, say, Tahoe wood for siding. you know, David knows an engineer that softwood is not going to necessarily work for structural, but, you know, for siding and flooring and other elements of the house. Jobs in that, you know, train people to do that construction as well. So I think there's a lot of regenerative jobs where we can, you know, take care of the solutions caused by the problems caused by climate change and on the adaptation level, while at the same time employing people in modeling the solutions in EV installation, solar installation, all of which can pay more livable wages than current service sector jobs, right? That oftentimes are, you know, minimum wage. People have to work 2 or 3 jobs to live in unaffordable housing. So I think there's a real social justice element in the work I'm doing, really focusing on, you know, let's proactively make those job opportunities available to our low-income folks, you know, predominantly Latino community, for example, and make sure that folks that have been left out of our environmental economy have a chance to connect to it. So those are some of the things we're working on here. And I also got endorsed by, just yesterday or a couple of days ago, the Sunrise movement of South Lake Tahoe. So, you know, it just means a lot to me. It's not a huge group, but it's just the idea that you know, it's our kids' future, our grandkids, the future generations. Really, to me, we should all be united for that cause at whatever level we're working and whether we're in office or just as citizens, to come together and tackle this together. And I think in doing that, we can, you know, it's a unifying issue. It shouldn't be partisan. Hopefully we'll get to that point soon, but unfortunately it still often is. And everyone here is on the right side of it. So glad to be on this discussion today. And everyone out there that's listening, my website is here's my hat, john4council.com.
Thank you very much, John. A great presentation. I really think that draws us to an end. I'm sorry that we're ending about 10 minutes early, but I thought it was an incredible hour. If people want to find out more about the South Lake Tahoe Democratic Club, you can go to our website, or you can send us an email, and that information is going to also be put in the chat box. Sarah, would you like to close us out? If you're there.
And I'm here. I was just finding that link to put in the chat box. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. Thank you to the attendees for taking the time to listen about this important issue. And want to remind everybody that recordings to all of our webinars this week will be at the Tahoe Climate Change Action Network.org website. I just put it in the chat, or will in just a sec. Thank you, Sue, for hosting a great conversation. Thanks to all of the presenters, and thank you for stepping up to run for office, all of you. I have tremendous respect for it, and look forward to great results. And with that, I'm going to put a couple things in the chat box here for our attendees, and wish you all a great day. Hope to see you Friday and Saturday at our upcoming webinars. There you go.
Thank you, Sarah. Great job.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.